The second battle of Geonosis is in no doubt one of the most memorable large-scale battles in the Clone Wars animated series. I would argue the main reason for this is not because of the story per se, but instead on the unique trooper designs. In one episode alone, we see the Desert Camel-inspired ARF Trooper, the Spec Ops Trooper, Commander Jet, and also the fearsome Flame Troopers. I've covered my customs of the ARF Trooper and the Flame Trooper in previous videos. Today, I will round it up with Commander Jet and the Spec Ops Trooper. I've decided to put both in the same video because of their obvious similarities. Making these two customs is like making repeats, but each time round I found some interesting things that will help me in my future customs. So, first up, let's look at the Spec Ops Trooper. This is a straight up paint job, but nonetheless I'm still very happy to have made this custom because I've yet to make a Special Ops Clone Trooper. Many fans might recognize these guys with the unique earmuff design. I got the head sculpt and backpack from John Walker Customs, while the body is modified from a Clone Pilot Hawk body. I don't have a specific reason why I use Clone Pilot Hawk, except it is what's available to me at that time. I don't mind it though, as many attest to the fact that this Clone Trooper version has great shoulder and elbow articulation. The shoulder armor size is also more screen accurate to live action Revenge of the Sith, which is what I prefer. The main drawback to this body is this. There are some extra prep work on the chest because it has a square indent to receive Clone Pilot Hawk's computer box. I had to fill it up with putty, and despite my best efforts, you could still spot traces of this indent. Not ideal, but I am okay with this. The chest doesn't have the line down the center also, so I had to use the scriber to make that line. The figure uses the old pin joints on the elbows and knees. Aesthetically, I'm actually okay with this, but from a customization point of view, it is a huge pain in the ass to reassemble. And speaking of reassembling, some of you might know the recent Hasbro releases of Commander Bly, Hawk, and even Bad Batch Rex figures have the lower leg swapped. I wasn't aware of this until I was putting it back together after painting. I managed to swap it back, but decided to leave the paint scheme alone, so the color scheme is a bit off. I managed to do the shoulder armor symbol by cutting my own stencil. First, I went onto the internet to find an image. I then resized the image in Photoshop, printed to scale, and then used the masking sheet to cut it out. The stencils here didn't come out perfectly because the lines are so delicate, the masking sheet fell apart and I had to piece it back together as I stuck it onto the shoulders. Once I had the stencil in place, I did my best to fill in the colors. When I removed the stencil, the symbol still wasn't perfect, so I need to refine it with a Gundam panel liner. Last thing I want to say about this figure is installing the backpack. I wasn't just going to glue this hunk of resin onto the back. I instead wanted to put a plastic dowel to support it. The holes are drilled by hands, and then I snip a piece of plastic from a model kit tree to fashion it into a dowel. This is what I have in the end. I'll glue this down later, but I just wanted to show this to you on camera. Next up, I have Commander Jet. I'm really thrilled with the way he turned out. The colors here is a lot more vibrant than the Spec Ops Trooper. To keep consistency with the Spec Ops Trooper, I decided to use a Commander Bly figure. Again, it is a straightforward paint job, but there are several spots where I am quite happy with the way it turned out. Instead of using the shoulder pauldron from Bly, I decided to use one I bought from John Walker Customs. I also went with a John Walker comma, which I've previously reviewed. As some of you might know, I despise trying to glue on comma because fabric and other softer materials like leather doesn't glue well onto this type of plastic. But John Walker's soft resin comma is pretty much a godsend because it glues better than any other materials onto this plastic, and it also retains the shape without the comma looking all flimsy, which would have broken the illusion of scale. It has one drawback though, but in this case, I figured out how to avoid it. Some of you might remember the Phase 2 Perch Trooper I tried this on. Well, not long after I completed it, it ripped in this area. This happened because I was dead set on trying to glue this down like I would have if it is a softer material like fabric or leather. As a result, there is tremendous pressure here and it really restricts the leg articulation. And as a result, when articulating your leg, I ended up ripping this piece. But in this case, because of Commander Bly's holster and strap here, you could pretty much have these elements kept in place even without gluing the front. So I just glued the back and left the rest detached, and it allows for a lot more flexibility. Last thing I want to point out is the way I finished these figures. I went with little to no weathering, with some chipping on the yellow and dark brown parts, but that's it. The reason is this. I personally like this color scheme a lot and I don't want to detract it too much with weathering. With a primarily earth tone color also, too much grime would have muddled up all the colors and it just loses all its vibrancy. Also, I have many people leaving comments that they think my figures would have benefited from being matte. I respect your opinion, and I know that's the way most customizers would have done it, but I like my Star Wars Troopers to be semi-gloss or glossy. To me, Star Wars Trooper has always had a bit of gloss to him. Also, having it slightly glossy gives me the opportunity to make certain parts matte, such as these undershirt areas. I think having different degrees of sheen gives the figure some depth to them. Again, it's just personal preference. So there you have it. With most of the troopers from that Clone Wars episode, I can't wait for the release of Kiara Mundi. I appreciate all of you out there who stuck with me on this channel. I have not been doing much customization lately because I am actually designing and overseeing the construction of my new apartment, so all hobbies took a backseat at the moment. Rest assured though, I will have a kick-ass setup for making customs in my new place, so I'll be sure to continue with this hobby. Again, thank you so much, goodbye, and I'll see you in my next video.